Hey everyone, my guest today is Dr. Marc J. Defant, a professor of geology and geochemistry at the University of South Florida, whose work now spans both the physical sciences and evolutionary psychology. He's published in top journals, including Nature, and has received funding from organizations like the National Science Foundation and National Geographic. In recent years, he's turned his attention to how ideology is shaping research in psychology and gender studies, publishing peer reviewed critiques of social constructionism, the gender pay gap, and the scientific foundations of modern feminism. He's also the author of the popular science book Voyage of Discovery From the Big Bang to the Ice Age, and has appeared on shows like The Joe Rogan Experience and the Dinesh D'Souza podcast. Today, we're talking about what happens when activism collides with science and why evidence still matters. Welcome to the show, Marc.
Thanks for having me.
I want to thank you for being here today. And I was wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're working on.
Okay. Many moons ago, I became a geochemist working mainly on volcanoes all over the world, collecting samples, and very exciting time. Really enjoy it. Even today, I get out. I've switched from geochemistry of volcanoes. I'm kind of now working on a comet strike that may have hit Earth about 12,500 years ago and initiated maybe even the demise of what we refer to as the megafauna, woolly mammoths and saber-tooth tigers and that sort of thing. So that's been very interesting. And then along about 1990, I read a book called The Moral Animal by Robert Wright and got very interested in evolutionary psychology. I was teaching a science honors course at the time, and I started using that book in there, and then I branched out and started teaching a full-blown evolutionary psychology course. And I started reading everything I could get my hands on, and recently, I felt, confident enough over the last few years to start writing research articles on it. And that's what led me to contact you in the first place. So
Yeah. I was just very interested in some of that stuff. And yeah, it was, I mean, I can understand the transition from one study to another. And yeah, I haven't heard very much about the comet. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, we don't know if it's a comet or meteorite or a strange comet chemically, but we're finding all kinds of evidence where this boundary occurs in the rock record. At around 13,800 years ago, or 12,800 years ago, we find sphericals, rounded sphericals. Well, they are rounded, and they have elements that we would find in comets and meteorites, like platinum, and we call them the PGEs, the platinum group elements, osmium, iridium. Usually, most people don't hear those kinds of elements in everyday life because they're not found in great abundance on Earth. So they're high in extraterrestrial objects like comets and meteorites. And then we also find large carbon concentrations at the boundary. So it's believed that was due to massive fires on the planet Earth that may have been caused by this impact. We find these spherules, by the way, are probably melted, and that's what's caused them to be in the spherical shape that they're in. So the impact, the energy was so great that it melted the material. A combination of material from the comet / meteorite or terrestrial material. Am I getting too deep on this?
No,
I don't want to bore you.
No.
So, and then to go on from there, just about that time, we have the Clovis culture disappearing.
Yeah.
from planet Earth and the large megafauna. So maybe there's a relationship between the two. We don't know. It's very hard because there weren't a lot of humans around back then, and there weren't a lot of, we don't find a lot of sites containing megafauna.
Hmm.
So it's very hard. It's long been known, though, that the megafauna disappeared about 12,000 years ago. So it wouldn't be surprised. And this event, by the way,
Yeah.
is right on the boundary between what geologists call the Holocene from the Pleistocene. And
Okay.
so it's been known, the boundary's been known for a long time. And there was a gigantic climate change back then. So we think that was also generated by the impact of the comet.
Hmm.
It's called the Younger Dryas. So geologists have known about it for hundreds of
Yeah.
years.
And do you think that massive impacts like this, do you think they almost um, kickstart a faster evolution? Do you think it I guess so if it's wiping things out, that makes room for what's left to kind of evolve in a bunch of different directions?
Well, that's a great question. I think what you may be referring to, we did see, for example, at the end of the Cretaceous, when a
Hmm.
meteorite struck and probably killed off all the dinosaurs,
Yeah.
there was a rapid evolution of life because it went in to fulfill or fill all of those niche that were filled previously by the dinosaurs. So, for example, you had the mammals. They were
Hmm.
little tiny critters running around trying
Yeah.
not to get stepped on by dinosaurs. And then when the meteorite struck, it drastically changed everything, and the mammals then evolved into all those empty, uh, what we call environmental niches,
Uh-huh.
and so you get evolution taking place there. I'm not sure um, that though the one that we're talking about
Hmm.
occurred and was big enough to wipe out so much that there was evolution taking place.
Yeah.
It's very hard even to correlate this with the loss of the megafauna, but
Yeah.
it's been a goal. We don't see many megafauna, if any. Well, we do see some, but not much past. When you get into younger rocks,
Hmm.
past the younger Dryas boundary.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting to think about just how different things were back then. Uh,
Well, it
seems
was
like we just
only 12,800 years ago. So, I'm glad I wasn't around then.
yeah.
If all of this happened. So
Yeah.
yeah, pretty exciting times for mammals.
Yeah. Yes. So I see that you do gender research as
Yes.
well. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
Uh, can I give a little bit of background first on evolution and
Absolutely. Yes.
evolutionary psychology? Because I don't think your audience probably is that aware of evolution psychology. If what
Yeah.
I found on other podcasts is true,
Yeah,
um,
please do.
the when we talk about evolutionary psychology, we're talking about how humans evolved in hunter-gatherer society, and it's very
Okay.
different than what's happening today. The only difference is that we had at least 300,000 years of Homo sapiens and direct ancestors evolution in hunter-gatherer
Hmm.
society, whereas civilization is at best 10,000 years old. So anything that's happening today, it's going to take a long time for that to have an impact on the evolution of humans.
Yeah.
Not so with hunter-gatherer society. Let me give you some good examples. About oh gosh, somewhere between 4 and 7 million years ago, our human ancestors left the trees, and they began to walk upright. We have fossils that are around
Hmm.
7 million years old of ancestors, hominids walking upright,
Yeah. Yeah.
and uh, so if you look back at the size of their brains, like for example Australopithecus, which existed about 4 million years ago, had a brain just a little bit larger than a chimpanzee. In fact, it's thought to be maybe the connection between humans and chimpanzees.
Hmm.
That is what people call, our ancestors of both groups. So
Yeah.
that creature evolved incredibly fast in terms of brain development. Um, to us. So we went
Hmm.
from Australopithecus to Homo sapiens in 4 million years, and brains went from chimpanzee size or a little bit bigger to us, which is evolutionary speaking and geological age wise, that's just incredibly fast. And
Yeah.
no one really knows for sure what caused that. Probably life on the savannah, where we left the trees and started having to hunt on the savannah, maybe related to language and the
Hmm.
development of language, and maybe have some impact on being able to detect games people play and the lies they tell. So all that went into probably the development of our large brains. But
Yeah.
as soon as it did, boy, it really snowballed, and we have the large brains, thank God, today, that we do have.
Yeah.
And what this did was, when you have a large brain, women cannot deliver babies to full maturity.
Hmm.
So you have then the fetus coming out at only 25% of the development of the brain,
Yeah.
which is huge, because when that baby comes out, it is completely helpless. Anybody that's had children knows about that. And it requires the full, uh, you know, everything that a mother can do to help it
Hmm.
is required. And in addition, it probably needs, particularly in hunter-gatherer society, it probably needs a lot of support from the father. And so
Yeah.
that's what we think happened, was that women started looking for help from the men. This is rather unusual in species where
Hmm.
the male donates more than sperm and then moves
Yeah.
on. Usually it's that way. But in humans, you see that women are looking for this male parental investment, and if a male gives that, then they give access sexually, and this has a big impact on behavior of men and women, and it also emphasizes what women are looking for. If you if you look across culture,
Hmm.
and there's been some huge studies, like 60,000 people in a couple of studies have been asked and polled around the world in all kinds of various cultures. And in every culture, it shows that women are choosing men on their ability to gain resources. And this is very different than what men are choosing. And
Uh-huh.
in addition, when it's important to note across culture, because then we know that there's probably culture isn't having an impact on this choice, because all cultures do it.
Hmm.
So, and then let's go to men. What are men looking for? Men are looking for beauty in women. And that's not as shallow as it may seem, because beauty is actually an example of health
Uh-huh.
and youth in women. So, what men are really searching for is beautiful, is healthy young women. And that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. In hunter gatherer society, women were either delivering babies or lactating during most of their time of age when they could have babies.
Hmm.
So, in terms of getting your genes passed on, it was better for males to find women that were young so they could start having babies right away.
Yeah.
And you would then, by the time you're an older man, and for that matter, women, you would have more children. And as far as women looking for resources, if the man gave them help in resources, then they were more likely to have children that were successful in making it to their breeding age, where they could pass their genes on. And
Yeah.
so you have this dichotomy about what men and women are looking for. By the way, one of the reasons that women probably are reluctant to have indiscriminate sex is because of this dichotomy that existed in
Hmm.
hunter-gatherer society. They were reluctant because if they had indiscriminate sex, they might end up with a baby, which they had to raise potentially alone. So
Yeah.
you can see the concern on the basis of women. So it was much better for a woman then to make sure she was getting a dependable man, someone she could rely on for resources, because those resources, it's not too important today in terms of protein, but in hunter-gatherer society, getting large mammals
Hmm.
in hunting was extremely important. And if you have a baby, you're not able to go out and hunt those down. So I'm not saying that women couldn't
Yeah.
hunt them. I'm just saying that with a baby, it made it very hard, if not impossible. So we see then men forming these hunting groups and working together to bring down these large mammals and bring home
Hmm.
large, high protein for the family. Men are also good protectors. Men not only are good hunters, they defend the family. And this is important in hunter gatherer societies because these tribes fought each other. If you go down to the Yanomamo, for example, in Venezuela, which
Uh-huh.
have been highly studied, you find that their their ability to have children, or the number of children, increases by how violent some of these men are. The
Hmm.
more you killed of somebody else in the tribe, um, it correlates with how many babies you were having life. So men that didn't kill didn't have as many babies as men that do kill. And
Yeah.
so I'm not saying that's the way to get your genes passed on, but it's a way of life in hunter-gatherer society for some of these tribes. Not all tribes are as violent as the Yanomamo, but they certainly do exemplify not only that men can be violent, more violent
Hmm.
than women certainly, but it correlates with how many offspring you have. And violence can be good in some circumstances, like um, protecting your family or hunting. You need to
Hmm.
be able to do violent things potentially to bring down game. So, and in particular, the tribes fighting one another, you need a brave man too if you're going to, if you're going to survive tribal warfare, which was, a lot of people don't realize it, but it was very, very common
Hmm.
for tribes to be touching. And what happens in those tribes? One tribe wins, they kill all the men and take the women. It's not
Yeah.
a very nice scenario, but and men kill men at much higher rates than they kill women. I know we have violence with women, which is a
Hmm.
problem, but it's nothing like violence against men. And
Yeah.
so I would, and I know I'm talking too long here, but I'll get back to you in just a minute. But
Okay.
I just wanted to emphasize that we have this idea of toxic masculinity
Hmm.
out there, and I think that's kind of a misnomer. Yes, men are more violent and they do bad things, um, but they also they were chosen by women for our masculinity. Men have about 10 times more testosterone than women. And what do we get with that extra testosterone? Well, we tend to be violent, but we also tend to be masculine. In other words, we tend to be protectorates of family. We tend to be able to be brave and go out there and fight other men or take down
Yeah.
large mammals. So I will get into the evolutionary psychology part, but I'll let you
Uh-huh.
catch your breath here for a minute and see if you have
Oh
any
yeah.
questions about that.
Well, no, I mean, you were pointing out that yes, unfortunately, we do have men who are violent towards women, but we also have a lot of men who will put those type, the bad type of men in place if they
Yes.
do um attack a woman or child. And I know that especially in the prison system, but you know,
Yeah.
it, and some had someone, an acquaintance whose sister was hit by her boyfriend, and well, all the brothers get together and
That's right.
like
That's
keep him
right. And it
away from
happened in
her.
hunter gatherer society too.
Hmm.
So not only did you have to deal with the woman, but you also had to deal with the woman's immediate family.
Yeah.
So that was good, and that helped in the protection also.
Yeah. Yeah, and, the whole time you were describing this as well, I was thinking I have live bearing fish,
Hmm.
and, the pregnant mother has her fish, they swim out and doesn't have anything to do with them after they're born,
Yeah,
and
very true.
and, in the male competition as well, I have a male swordtail that's he something was wrong with him when he was born, and I just had to put him in a quarantine tank because the alpha male was trying to kill
Oh
him,
yeah. Hmm.
and it was just making me think, okay, they're trying to keep, well, first off, he's the alpha male, but also that deformed fish didn't breed with any of the females, didn't even really
Hmm.
try, I
No,
think it was kind of nature's way of like, okay, well,
just
this
happy
isn't
to get it through life.
yeah, yeah, and so it wasn't really a worry of that deformity getting into their gene
Hmm.
pool because they, didn't y you know, just didn't have a desire to reproduce, I guess, so he's very happy in his quarantine tank today, but, um, another eh, eh, also with the genetics, other species, if there's something wrong with their offspring, I've seen firsthand, like, dogs with certain puppies, like, I used to be a vet tech, I saw a lab had 14 puppies, and
Hmm.
I kept trying to get her to take care of this one, and she just kept pushing it away, and it's like, okay,
Oh, really? I've never seen that
yeah.
before. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's, I do see that with dogs a lot, and it's like, "Okay, well, I've already got 14, this specific one, something's wrong with it," so then it either has to get euthanized or put into, foster care and bottle fed if you can get it the colostrum, but, it is interesting how they kind of take the bad genes out of their own, um, I guess, breeding,
No, you're
you know?
right. It's a good point. Um, a lot of times, females will know, um, not just in humans, but in the general population, will know
Mhm,
when one of her offspring is not going to make it, or it's going to take a lot more resources to do it, and
mhm,
as a consequence, it's kind of I think this is one of the problems we have with the feminist movement in this country, is that I don't think they recognize how competitive the world is. And I think if you
yeah,
deal with animals, you begin to realize it's pretty
yeah,
competitive out there. And females have to be worrying about how they're going to distribute their limited resources, at least limited in terms of what existed for us in hunter-gatherer society, or for an animal for that matter.
mhm.
And I would also like to just touch on this, that is,
Yeah.
that you brought up sexual selection,
Mhm.
which is something that Darwin realized way back in the 1800s when he did his research. And that was that we have both natural selection, which,
Mhm.
is the old deer, for example, gets eaten by the predators because it can't run as fast as the younger
Yeah.
deer. So it's a way of culling the herds.
Yeah.
But there is sexual selection too, where males and females choose differently. For example, the red cardinal, it's always an example I use in my classes, where a red cardinal is kind of a
Yeah.
bad way to be when you're thinking about predators, because you stand out if you're red.
Mhm.
But it also is true that that's what attracts female cardinals.
Yeah.
So the male is willing to risk to get the attraction of females,
Yeah.
and it's the female that actually makes him red. So females, for whatever reason, started selecting males that were red, and that was a sign of health in the male, and so they kept selecting for it. You forcing the bird to make this color in its feathers, which
Mhm.
takes a lot more energy, which then is a sign of how healthy they are.
Yeah.
And we see the same thing in female choice. Females are choosing males on many bases, one of them being their ability to bring home the bacon, but also on their strength, their power. And it's
Mhm.
exactly why, probably, at least partially why, men tend to be stronger than females physically,
Yeah.
because they've been chosen or they competed with men, and the winners had more access to females, either
Yeah.
because women chose that or because men could take it. Probably because women chose that. We're 1.15 times larger than women. But if you take the male gorilla, they're drastically larger, like 2 times larger than females. And what happens in that sexual selection is
Uh-huh.
that the males beat the crap out of all the other males,
Yeah.
and then they have full access to all the females, and the losers go home and try, next time
Yeah.
to get access. So I find that very interesting. I
Yeah.
think for the most part, my students find all of this interesting on how choice can impact us.
Yeah. So, you were talking about the cardinal. I have a severe macaw, so he's a
Hmm.
gorgeous
Oh,
green
really? Uh-huh.
macaw, and I take him outside at times. He doesn't fly; he has poor eyesight.
Uh-huh.
But I've learned he has to always just stay in the catio because male birds in the area, like the red-winged blackbirds, and other, will swoop at him and
No
try and
kidding.
attack him, and it's
They're males, or are they females and males attacking?
I don't know if they're males or females. I guess I just assumed
Interesting.
they're males, but it might
I
be
assume they're
females.
males too, yeah.
Yeah, because 'cause we're not when he's not by trees or nests or anything when this has happened, and it's like he's not even the same species, but,
Yeah, and we got to get rid of this guy. He's too good looking.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Watch out,
Maybe
I'll put
that's
his
the
bow tie
mentality
on.
anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't the owl, I had an owl try and get him through my living room
Wow.
window, and that I'm like,
Whoa.
he might have been wanting to eat him, or some
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
really know, but he tried 3 times. But the smaller birds, yeah, I think they viewed him as a threat of some
Competition.
sort.
Yeah.
So, yeah, poor
Wow.
guy.
Makes sense
Um,
though.
you're right, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, did you wanna go into further into your research or,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
if you I don't know what your audience is interested in, but yeah, I'd love to go into it. I uh one of the things that I've found is that a lot of the things that we find being said by feminists don't
Mhm.
seem to mesh with evolutionary psychology. To
Yeah.
give you some examples, the feminist movement has focused primarily on what we call social construction. And
Okay.
social construction believes that everyone is born with a blank slate. And what I mean by that is we have no instincts that we're born with, everything is formed by culture. And I would say that culture is important. I don't want to deny that. But I also think that it is very faulty to think that culture has that big impact. For example,
Uh-huh.
they believe that if you're trans, culture made you that way. If you're masculine, culture made you that way, and so on and so forth.
Uh-huh.
Sex may even be culturally. I don't know how that happens, but there are some that claim that sex is socially constructed. So I would say then that that's definitely not what social construction is saying us.
Mhm.
And I noticed when I was doing some of my work in evolutionary psychology that the feminist movement denies evolutionary psychology and is rather critical of the whole field.
Yeah.
So I wrote this paper to show why I think that they're wrong and why they're not using rigorous empirical data. In
Mhm.
other words, when I talk to feminists, they say, "Oh, well, evolutionary psychology is wrong." And when I ask why, they say, "Well, it doesn't meet with what we think should happen in our culture." And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. If you're going to tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong because you have some empirical evidence to argue against me." And I
Yeah.
never hear them bring up any of that empirical evidence to support social constructionism. So I've concluded that we have a whole group in our universities that um, are not basing their research on truth.
Mhm.
It's based mainly on ideology, and I would say that we've got to be careful. I don't like seeing students being taught things that
Yeah.
aren't empirically documented. And
Yeah.
I think we owe it to, to our students to make sure that what we're saying is correct. And in evolutionary psychology, there's a lot of data to go with this, the studies, a lot of data to support what they're saying. For example, in choice, or that beauty is associated with health. There's all kinds of evidence. For example, that beautiful women live longer. I'll just tell you one example. When they started coming out with computers that could mesh pictures of women together,
Hmm.
they found that if you mesh them together, that men were much more interested in the average of women than they were in the individual pictures of women. So it seems like men at some level are choosing average. And you can think of that as a bell curve. And if you get right there in the middle, there's much less danger of you marrying someone that is going to be what do I want to say, physically or mentally off. They're
Hmm.
matching in the middle, particularly physically, since you're looking at a physical attribute.
Yeah.
So beauty may have some association with being average. Now, of course, we also know that beautiful women do live longer. They have less diseases, cancers, and of course, they look like younger people. In fact, models,
Yeah.
supermodels, are examples really of, women in their 20s looking like 16-year-old beautiful girls. So
Yeah.
uh, um, it's interesting then to see uh, how the evolutionary psychology meets with uh, what I would call
Yeah.
feminist ideology.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to tell you about my sponsors real quick. Sometimes I get on a roll cleaning or gardening, and I need a boost but don't have time for a meal. Big Fork Brand's pork jerky is the perfect choice to keep my momentum, offering high protein snacks for on the go energy boosts. Not only do they offer pork jerky, but they also make pork sticks, bacon sausage, bacon hot dogs, and burger and hot dog sauces. Products come in a variety of delicious flavors, including Thai green curry and maple and brown sugar for the meat options, and gangster and Chicago fire for the sauces. I personally think the original flavor of the pork jerky hits just right after tackling a big chore. It's a little salty and very flavorful. My discount code gives you 20% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit bigforkbrands.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Harnessing the best nature has to offer, Zevo Life nourishes your body while driving your performance, vitality, and overall well-being. Each serving is a concentrated source of clean, well-balanced nutrition designed to support modern lifestyles, and just 1 teaspoon a day supports your gut, boosts energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. It's no wonder that it's receiving rave 5-star reviews. Step into a healthier future with a 30% discount and a 30-day risk-free guarantee by visiting zivo.life and using my promo code. To support my show and to receive 30% off your entire order, enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. So I almost feel as though there's a movement to go against biology. Like suddenly it's a bad thing to try to be to try to be healthy or in shape, or um, I guess what else was it? You know,
I think you're right.
yeah, it's like, or it's almost bad to have competition or to fight for more. And I just don't understand it. And and when I was in school, so I'm kind of talking about two different topics. You can pick which one you
No,
want
that's
to
right.
bounce off of, but when I was in school and in biology, I had a professor that I did 3 semesters of research with, and it was starting to become the we need to accept two genders era, and I just I know that that was bothersome for a
You
lot of the
mean accept
biology.
more than two genders?
Yes, more than 2
Okay.
genders.
I
Yes,
just
thank you
want to
for the
make sure I
correction.
understand.
Yes, yeah, and it's like, well, how do you accurately teach biology, if you're going to force the professors to adopt, the idea that there's more than 2 genders? Of course, there's, abnormalities, but it's strange how things have changed over time.
Yeah, well, I would emphasize that uh, biologically speaking, we define men and women, on the basis of their genitals that they're
Mhm,
born with. And if you look at statistics, there's not very much in between those
mhm,
two, like you mentioned. And as a matter of fact, well, one feminist suggested there was I think she said there was as many as 2.5% people in between, which still isn't very many when you consider how many people there are out there. But um, I've seen another one done by a biologist, which was down around 0.16% of people in between the binary of male and female.
mhm.
So, if that number is real, gosh, it's very, very rare to see somebody
Yeah,
with genetic diseases, which is forcing them in between the binaries. And that's the very definition of binary being male and female, where
yeah.
you have very little in between. Certainly, um, there's some fluidity in our sexual attractions,
Mhm,
but not so much that my argument is, look, we're masculine and feminine to attract the opposite sex.
mhm.
I won't say that all women are attracted to masculine men, and I won't say all men are attracted to feminine women, but certainly that has an impact on who we choose to partner with. And if you don't have something that attracts you to the opposite sex, then it would certainly harm our ability to reproduce. So I would argue that masculine and feminine are traits that men and women have chosen over the history of hunter gatherer society and even further back in our ancestors to produce this dichotomy. So
Mhm.
it is biological. And in fact, masculine and feminine have different brain structures to a certain extent. Definitely, men and women have slightly different brains. I mean, I don't mean to say that it's hugely different. I don't mean to say
Yeah.
that men and women vary in their IQ. They don't. And as there are differences between men and women,
Mhm.
but those are, like, for example, men are much better at hitting targets. You would expect that since we evolved in hunter gatherer society where men had to go out and hunt.
Yeah.
Women are much better at going and being able to find locations where the best berries existed relative
Yeah.
to where they are. Men, though, are much better at knowing their position relative to where they came from.
Mhm.
So there are all kinds of interesting studies like that that show the differences between men and women, and it all goes back to to our evolution in hunter-gatherer society. Today, of course, there's not much of an impact because we just haven't been doing what we're doing now, and so we all have the sort of, if you will, this caveman,
Yeah.
brain trying to function in a civilized society.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, so I work with only males. I'm the the only female at my job. I'm a water operator, and that whole caveman thing just, um,
Oh,
I
you
mean,
understand it.
yeah, yeah. It's they're wonderful. They're all like big brothers, and I see that you do mention like the gender pay gap being misrepresented, and despite the fact that there are certain things like I'm not going to be able to put certain parts to repair a water main. There's certain things that I'm not physically big enough or strong enough, no matter how many weights I lift, to be able to do things. But I will say that there's other areas in my job where I've been able to prove myself, and
Different.
I get paid more than most of my coworkers. So,
Good. Good.
so to me, it's like you just have to find your path, and I think a lot of people, it, maybe females in particular, want to just give in to the um just give up, you know? And, well, no, men are paid well, men are, treated differently, and,
No, I would
sorry, I'm
do
kinda going into a
no, but I would hate
tangent,
to
but
see women do that. I think that they
yeah,
need to stand up for their rights. I
yeah,
think men and women should be paid equally for the same job.
yeah,
Um, Also, I forgot to mention, I wanted to go back to something you brought up, and then we can come
yeah,
back to this if you don't mind. I wanted to mention your statement about, um, us not understanding biology completely
uh-huh,
in the sense that, um, you know, the feminist movement is now arguing that we can be healthy at any size.
yes, I
It's the
wanted to
fat
talk about that.
studies.
Yeah,
And so I'm just bringing that up to emphasize what you said, and that is
yeah,
that the literature out there is just unbelievable. If you look at the medical literature on how bad it is to be overweight, and I don't want to
mhm,
hurt the feelings of people that are overweight, but you shouldn't be promulgating this idea that you can be healthy and also be overweight or God forbid obese,
mhm,
because that's going to shorten your life. All the data shows that, and you're going to be miserable partly doing it because you
yeah,
won't be healthy. Not you, but
yeah,
people out
no,
there
I
that.
understand.
So so I just wanted to touch on that. We can come back to it if you want, but I'll go back
Yeah,
to what we were just talking about if you like, which is working with males.
uh-huh,
Um, I think that the pay gap. The reason I was attacking the pay gap
uh-huh,
is that I think a lot of feminists keep suggesting that the patriarchy is this thing where men get together and try to figure out how to suppress women. And I
oh,
keep saying that no one's asked me to meetings on the weekends to see how we can oppress women.
yeah,
And so I think that what we have is we really have a patriarchy that's been derived from this evolution where men were chosen because they have high testosterone, and they
mhm,
naturally went into leadership roles because women were raising children all that time, and we have then what we have today because of that evolution.
yeah,
But we definitely don't. Um, I don't see. I think there is some discrimination, but I don't see a
mhm,
major history of it. I don't see it.
yeah,
Um, and so I would say that the kind of patriarchy we have is an evolutionary patriarchy. If you look at the research done by
uh-huh,
mostly female economists have gotten into this field. There's some men, but not many. And one of them won a Nobel Prize for her work on the gender pay gap, and
yeah,
that's Claudia Golden at Harvard. And she's very clear about it that the gender pay gap exists because of female choice. That is, that they are deciding to get into fields which give them a lot of flexibility. They don't have to
uh-huh,
work 80 hours a week, or they can, take time off to stay at home and raise children. And that ends up affecting their life history of payment.
yeah,
Whereas men are very high risk. They enjoy high risk jobs, like not just taking your life into your hands, but also jobs which stress, are competitive and stress people out. The 80-hour week jobs where they expect you to be around, every second.
Mm-hmm.
And so that pay gap is probably the result of that. In cases, though, where we have men and women doing the same job, men and women are pretty much paid the same,
Yeah.
at least based on what the economists are finding out, which I find
Yeah.
fairly interesting. So I think that the feminists have misused that to some extent intentionally.
Uh,
If they went and looked at the literature, they'd find that it's not due to men oppressing women or subjugating women or even discriminating against women very much. It has to do with uh, the amount of work that women and men put into the
yeah.
labor.
Yeah. I mean, I could go to a different department where the females in our company do work for much better hours, but it's going to be a lot less pay.
Sure.
So I mean, I feel like that's a perfect example of
If you won't mind me asking, do
that.
you have children?
No.
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 That's great. You can, you don't have to make that decision about. It's not
Yeah.
great necessarily you don't have children, but it's great that you're young and you can go in and,
Yeah.
and not have children to worry about. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I got married for the first time at 36, so
Oh,
it
wow.
just
Okay.
wasn't really ever on same with my husband, so it wasn't really on our
That's
radar.
nice.
So, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. 36. You don't look that old. So
Thank you.
not to say
Yeah.
36 is old. It's
No, I
not,
know,
but
but for having babies, it's considered
yeah.
geriatric, I'm pretty sure.
Well, no,
So, is it not? Or is it
no,
40?
not really. My wife had our third child, I think, when she was around 35 or 36.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I think the closer you get to 40, you might have to worry about it. But
that's what I thought was,
yeah,
yeah, there. Uh, so okay, so we talked about the health at any size, and
yeah.
we've also touched base on just research and the studies that people have accessible to them. So I think a really important part is how can the public tell the difference between real science and politically motivated research?
I wish I had an answer for that. I don't. Um,
Yeah.
we have a lot of. I write for Skeptic Magazine a lot. I'm a when I say I'm a skeptic, I mean that I doubt everything until I see data about it.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's the way people should try to live, um, because it is a world out there that's trying to hustle everybody,
Yeah.
and I think we have to be savvy about the potential of being taken advantage of, but at the
Mhm.
same time, uh, there's a lot of good research out there, and we have access to it very easily through AI and
Mhm.
Google and those kinds of things. So I think you can find it, but I think it takes, like, for example, I think a lot of people out there believe that this gender pay gap is an example of discrimination against women. And I
Uh-huh.
think maybe back, 60, 70 years ago, it may have been. But
Right.
today, I don't see much evidence of that. Um, I think it's a good thing that women now, I think, are being treated equally. At the
Mhm.
same time, I heard, um, our female presidential candidates constantly making reference to the pay gap
Yeah.
as an example of um, this patriarchy out there that's trying to discriminate against women. And
Mhm.
I feel bad about that. I feel bad that it's being misunderstood that way.
Yeah.
Um, that you should be happy about this. I mean, a lot of the evidence suggests that now women are dominating a lot of professions like law, more
Mhm.
women lawyers, more women judges. In education now, there are more women faculty. There are more women getting PhDs and master's degrees. More women graduating and going to college.
Mhm.
And as the women start to dominate, I think that's great for society. I also think, though, that we've got a lot of things coming from that.
Uh-huh.
Uh, for example, there's some papers that I've been working on lately where there's a lot of evidence that women uh, would prefer to have things safe around them socially, and
Mhm.
so they will cancel people that don't fit in with what they think is correct. So they're not as open to freedom of speech as men. They're not they are much more willing to cancel
Yeah.
and so people there's been a very famous woman out there named Helen Andrews who's been come up with this idea of the great feminization, when she's suggesting that now that women are dominating some of these fields, that
Mhm.
we have had the evolution of wokeism. And that makes a lot of sense based on
Yeah.
some of the evidence that I see of women choices, particularly in various fields.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting. When you start, I read the paper about a year ago, and now I'm starting to see it everywhere. So it's interesting
Yeah. Yeah,
trying to document it.
I can totally see that. I mean, I've had to tell myself sometimes, like, you can't expect all of your friends to agree with everything you say. So,
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, I must admit, though, I have that sometimes too.
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure we
It's
all
like,
do
why
a
don't
little
they
bit.
understand? I guess ultimately, the patriarchy and what women want
Mhm.
are very interesting, because I think this idea that women are choosing a great extent should empower women,
Mhm.
not make them feel like evolutionary psychology is bad news. Um, and women can start choosing differently now. If they don't want masculine
Mhm.
men, they can start choosing feminine men, or somewhere in between. And that's the kind of the message I'd like to leave to women, and I would like to encourage men to not to be hammered by this toxic masculinity, because after all, men don't want to see their wives or daughters or sisters, or mothers, um, mistreated, I
Yeah.
presume. So
Yeah.
on the other side of it, I think that you know this whole this whole choice business um, has been taking place for so long that we in many ways are having trouble dealing with it in our society today. And I
Mhm.
can give you a really good example. There's a guy named Spiro who did a study on the kibbutz in Israel. Turns
Uh-huh.
out that the kibbutz was formed from Eastern European Jews who wanted to create a society where men and women were exactly equal. And
Uh-huh.
so they formed these kibbutz in Israel to do that in the early 1900s. And what they had some very interesting rules. They said that all women had to work with the men in the fields, because it was primarily
Mhm.
an agricultural society, and that the children would be raised by the community. And so they didn't have, in fact, they discouraged mothers trying to focus on their own children. They
Yeah.
wanted to focus on all the children at once. So they had certain men and women taking care of the children while others worked in the fields.
Mhm.
And then when the second generation of women came along, the women that were born to the original settlers, when they came along, they started changing things. They didn't like it the way it was. They didn't like
Yeah.
working in the field hot summer days and working out in the Israeli desert. They much preferred staying and raising the children. So they changed
Mhm.
the rules. They said, hey, we can't we don't want to work out in the fields, and we want to raise the children. So they really changed quite a bit, where now mothers could spend their time
Yeah.
with the children could stay at home with the father and the mother. They
Yeah.
developed marriages so that you could be they didn't have marriages before. Another interesting thing was they had boys and girls taking showers together. And of course, when the girls reached puberty, they didn't think that was a very good idea.
Right.
I'm sure it was much to the chagrin of the of the boys, but then they decided to separate and take their own
Mhm.
showers. So it turns out that it was it was very much what we have today in society. In other
Yeah.
words, another thing, when the women went to raising children, they lost interest in running the society.
Hmm.
So women shouldn't allow themselves to be, I think, hurt by the fact that they may want to raise children.
Yeah.
They can work, but they ought to be able to also raise children in a society, especially a society like ours, where we promote families and
Hmm.
the raising of children.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it's we are lucky that we do have that choice now, where if you want to be career oriented, you can be career oriented. But if you want to be family oriented, there are careers out there that are better suited to that. They might not pay as much, but it's
True.
kind of what you want.
Well,
But
you bring up a good point. A lot of women gravitate towards teaching. They
mhm.
gravitate towards social studies. They graduate towards um, things like medicine, nursing,
Yeah.
teaching, social workers. So my point is, though, that those are fields, because there's so many women and some men in those fields, they
Mhm.
tend to pay less because they
Yeah.
can pay less. Capitalism, if you have a oversupply of something.
Yeah.
So that impacts the pay gap also, which I didn't mention before. But there's a reason why women choose that. It's not just
Mhm.
maternal instincts. It also gives them a lot of flexibility. For example, teachers get out at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
They may have to grade at home or some things like that, but um, or you have more flexibility if you're a dentist, for example, and you can move, or a veterinarian. A lot of
Mhm.
women, well, the women dominate the veterinarian field.
Yeah.
I knew you
Yeah.
had an
Yep.
interest in animals, so
Yep.
can probably relate to that.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So, yeah, and it's funny because animals actually often prefer, females
I'm
handling
not
them.
surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised at all.
So,
Yeah, it's good for
yeah.
the animals, I'm sure.
So, when we were talking about, real science and politically motivated research, I've noticed that especially in the health field, but, also other fields, if it's a big, long article telling you, you should do these things, and the end result is they're pushing a product,
Oh
then I
yeah,
don't trust that, and then
yeah, really.
yeah, and then, with is because we were just talking about, veterinary medicine, a lot of these animal food studies are funded by companies like Purina, etcetera, and so it's very difficult to find research that doesn't have other motives in it to find like the best pet food or any product. You have to see who's funding that research because I feel like that kind of taints the
No, I couldn't
results
agree
of the
with you
research.
more.
Yeah.
I think I have a big problem too with Johnson and Johnson and some of these big medical outfits that they fund these studies themselves a lot of
Mhm.
times, and they keep their fingers in it, and that messes up the data. So I'm
Yeah.
always skeptical. We've had too many bad things. Maybe it's because I read a book on Johnson and Johnson recently, but
Yeah.
boy, they with their Tylenol, and
Mhm.
don't get me started on
I
that.
know. Yeah. Yeah, that's another
No kidding.
whole other thing. So, um, all right. So, what all is on your website? Well, actually, first, I want to know if there's anything else that you want the listeners to know.
Well, since you mentioned my website, I'd
Yeah.
just say,
Okay.
if they're interested in any of this stuff, my website, I have my papers up there. I just wrote a paper
Uh huh.
on social constructionism, um, so or critical of social constructionism, and that came out in Human Nature.
Hmm.
So my website, it has my book there, and if you're interested in contacting me, you can go there and send me an email.
Yeah.
It's Marc Marc Defant Defant.com.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I saw that. Some of your where are some of your papers published at? Because I don't want to get them
Well,
wrong.
this
But
one that's critical of feminism is published in Sexuality and Culture, which is a journal.
okay.
The most recent one was Human Nature.
Uh huh.
That's on social constructionism. I have a paper out on why we shouldn't be, um, this big movement to take children and convert them to the opposite sex,
Mhm.
and doing um, the horrid things that some people are doing, are just wrong, because young children in particular don't know how they're going to turn out. They may feel like they're the opposite sex that they were born as now,
Uh-huh.
but it may change as they get older. And many cases have been that way. A woman just won a lawsuit against,
Yeah.
um, I think it was a medical clinic in New York that
Okay.
operated on her and cut off her breasts, and now you can't change that back. So
Yeah.
uh, my argument is that children are too young, and I say children when you're doing 12, 13-year-old, 14, even in my
Mhm.
opinion, even after puberty we should be careful, because I don't think you can know completely what you want to be when you're
Yeah.
even in your teens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we need to be careful. Anyway, that was a paper that
Yeah.
was published in, what was it, marriage and sexuality. I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It's been about a year since it came out.
Yeah. Yeah, not to keep you on the recording, but,
Oh no, that's all right.
I think about this a lot with transitioning children. I was a tomboy. And most days of the week, I don't wear makeup. I used to wear boy clothes forever, and when I listen to detransitioners speak about what led them to transition in the first place, a lot of it is pressure to do so, and
Oh
not
gosh.
feeling comfortable in their body. Like, a lot of the females
Uh-huh.
were overweight and uncomfortable with how they looked, and it's very frustrating that instead of whichever doctors they're seeing, or whoever it is, psychologists, instead of encouraging them to maybe be healthier, make some healthier choices, to make themselves more comfortable in their own body, they're just saying, "Oh no, you don't need to lose weight. Just transition to a male
Oh my
if that's what
gosh.
it's." And and there are real people out there talking about those exact things. So I think that, and I'm not saying that's every case, of course,
No, of
but
course not.
it's I do think that it's something that needs to be talked about more often and respected, as far as what goes into the psychology and just the biology of it, instead of viewing it all through a lens of, oh, this person hates the trans community.
Well, I worry about this because the feminist many feminists believe that men and women are equal, and then you can switch back and forth, that female and male are, you know this thing that you can. And I would argue that that is just not true, that we
Yeah.
are our biology, and that we have to really be careful, because a lot of people are getting hurt by this.
Mhm.
Not to mention the fact that men now are in sports, and
Yeah.
I'm very
Yeah.
disturbed by the fact that a lot of feminists have not stood up and raised hell about this. I think it's because they really believe that men and women are the same, and
Yeah.
so therefore, if they stand up against this, they'll be going against what they firmly believe. But all the if you look at hormones, if you look at the brain development and differences, men and
Mhm.
women really are different.
Yeah.
Not so much that we can't talk to each other, but certainly um, different in how we see the world, even.
Yeah. Yeah, as someone who works with all men in a physical, um, workspace, I can tell you I greatly appreciate the the differences between men and women. Like, I'm happy to have these strong people. People, I don't want to compliment them too much.
Yeah, give them big
'Cause
heads.
yeah, but I do always find myself very appreciative of the differences that we have, because of course there's other things that I excel in, where it's like, all right guys,
Of
let's get
course.
it together. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
it's the firsthand experience really shows, a great perspective. And it does feel like with what you mentioned with the sports, and it feels like women's rights are being trampled a bit by feminists, which is
I know. That's crazy,
it's
isn't it?
crazy. So yeah,
Yeah, it's the first thing my wife and I noticed when we started seeing this
yeah,
work out was,
yeah.
where are all the feminists? Why aren't they saying things? It's taken Olivia Dunn and people like that to come forward.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, yeah, I want to thank you for being here today, and I want to encourage the audience to check out your website.
Thank you.
Anytime you have something going on, feel free to
Oh,
message
I'd
me.
love
And
to. Yeah, I'd love to come back.
yeah,
Thank you for
absolutely.
having me. I'm very appreciative of that.
Of course. Yes,
I enjoyed it
absolutely.
immensely.
Yes, I did too. Anytime I can talk about science, I'm happy about it.
Well,
So,
let's keep in touch then.